140-mile-per-hour winds. Then by Wednesday, it approaches the Lesser Antilles. By Thursday, it's somewhere in the vicinity just north of Puerto Rico. And then by Friday, now this is this coming Friday, so about, 5-6 days away, it is north of the island of Hispaniola, and it's moving into the Bahamas again as a strong Category 4 hurricane. Now, I do always want to remind you that make sure you pay attention to that entire cone of uncertainty. So it could fall anywhere within that cone. It could be over the island of Hispaniola, north of the Bahamas, but right now we're generally taking this towards the Bahamas. And the forecast models, the spaghetti plot, we tend to look at this, fairly often to see what all the forecast models are saying, and they're in pretty good agreement as well. We've colored these to show you sort of the time frame. So where it starts to turn yellow, that's about 3 to 5 days from now. When the lines start turning white, that is more than 5 days from now. And notice there is now some consensus sort of coming together here of taking this storm very close or through the Bahamas. And that would end up being next weekend. So a week from yesterday. So we're talking next Saturday and Sunday. This starts to approach the Bahamas. Again, as a strong, potentially Category 4 hurricane. And then there's still a bit of uncertainty where it goes once it gets to the central Bahamas. And the question is, how quickly does it make a turn? Now, a lot of the forecast models are now starting to turn this to the north in the general direction of the Carolinas. I'm going to show you that here in just a second. Now, this is what I'm going to show you right now. I've been showing you this for the last couple of days. Perhaps you've seen it. Chief Meteorologist Steve Jervey was showing this on Friday. Here are two of our models, the European model in red and the American GFS model in green. Now, what we're also noting with these models is they're pretty close, pretty accurate. They're really sort of lining up, having the storm north of Puerto Rico. Now, once we get beyond this point, the models are still in pretty good agreement, and then start taking the system off to the north. So, at least these two computer models, in a sense, what they're doing is moving it through the central Bahamas, and once it gets into the central Bahamas, the system slows down and then hangs a right and starts moving up the eastern seaboard. Now, that position that you see there, that would be early, about a week from now. So let's say a week from Monday or Tuesday. That would be the position if these models were to play out. So the bottom line is, the reason why I show you this is neither one of these is likely to be the exact solution, but the models are starting to come into some agreement, more agreement than we've been seeing in recent days. A few days ago, these models are just going all over the place. So just to give you an idea that we're starting to get some more certainty in the model forecast. Now, where does Irma go? Again, it's the big question. Well, here's what's guiding it. We've got this big area of high pressure, the Bermuda High in the Atlantic, and the system is basically rounding around the edge of that high. Now, in the eastern U.S., you'll notice we got a dip in the jet stream. There's a trough feature that's developed. So the question mark is, how soon does Irma feel the influence of that trough, or start to feel the weakness in that ridge? So what we're basically thinking here, that yellow line, the animated yellow line, is an approximate path for this, at least with what we're sort of thinking right now. As it'll start to round around the high, then the trough will start to influence Irma, and it'll generally start to pull Irma back off to the north. So this is what we're thinking, and this is going to be next Thursday. So Thursday we have it pegged near Hispaniola or Puerto Rico, and then starting to move through the Bahamas. So that is what we're sort of thinking right now in terms of where Irma goes. Now, what I do want to stress here is, again, keep in mind, this is more than a week out. And yes, the forecast models are starting to agree a little bit more. However, there is still enough uncertainty for us to not be entirely certain to rule out any kind of direct impact on the state of Florida. However, it is looking more and more likely that at least the center of Irma, will stay off of our coast. That is where the models are trending. That is where our forecast is now trending. So that would be good news for our area. Now, if Irma does move up that east coast of Florida, what effects could we see here in Tampa Bay? I'm looking at some of the questions, and somebody said, well, what would end up being an impact to Tampa Bay area. Well, if we're on the western side of the system, which if that forecast paints out, we'd be on the western side of that track. Now, if we're on the west side of that track, then that means that we actually get some drier air in from the north that starts to filter into the state. In fact, some of the forecast models we're looking at actually start to bring down our rain chances by end of next weekend and into early next week. Again, that's still up in the air. It's still about 10 days out. So just keep that in mind. So, but this is certainly the time of year when we look at the climatology starting to peak in terms of the hurricane season. I'm going to go ahead and switch graphics one more time and again show you some of the other things that we tend to look at, the climatology. Again, I showed you this yesterday. Just want to keep emphasizing this point here, is that now the entire Atlantic is open to development. This is really when we start really getting into the real peak of the season, the real meat of the season. We get waves coming off of Africa. They move into the warm waters of the Atlantic, the Gulf, the Caribbean, and they intensify. So this is really going to be the busiest month for us now that we're only 3 days in. So that's a quick check of the tropics. I do want to just very quickly mention and give you a look at what's happening locally with Max Defender 8. We don't really have much rain on land right now. We do have some scattered clouds, but I have been noting these thunderstorms that have been offshore, but they're starting to fall apart a little bit. So that is certainly good news. Our rain chances will increase here. So I'm going to go and answer a couple of questions here. Let me see what we've got coming in. If you have any questions about this, now would be the time. I'm going to answer for about 5 minutes or so. So let's see. You got folks from St. Augustine. How far inland if it hits Tampa, St. Pete? Linda, I don't think that that's going to be an issue. This is likely not going to hit Tampa, St. Pete. Most of the models keep this as an East Coast threat. Let's see. After you're going through Charlie, Jeff, you don't trust any forecast. Yeah, we all remember Charlie, how it sort of hung a right early. But I'll tell you what, just in the last 10 years, at least track forecasting has improved leaps and bounds. That actual forecast cone gets smaller and smaller incrementally every year because of improvements we make to the forecast modeling. So, all right, let's see. Okay, I know, Summer, you asked this. There's been something going around on social media, which I just want to put a quash to right now. There's been something that's been being shared on Twitter. So I've been seeing it make the rounds on Facebook about this becoming this monster hurricane and about having to potentially create a new category. That's fake, okay? Don't believe that. We could potentially have a very strong hurricane, certainly a major hurricane, off the Atlantic coast of the U.S. sometime early next or late next week. That is certainly a possibility. But regardless of strength, we just want to let folks know that, yeah, if you live anywhere right now along the Florida East Coast, all the way up to the Carolinas, even as far north as the Delmarva Peninsula, they still need to be paying close attention to this. Okay, let's see, another question. Let's see, next week, Palm Beach. Let's see, Palm Beach, I'm seeing some East Coast cities. If that track were to persist, we would have some pretty intense wave action on the east coast of Florida. You may get some rain as well. Can't rule it out. But also you could tend to see some beach erosion from the enhanced surf. So that's a look at what's going on. Right now, let's see. What is the European and what is the American model saying? Let me show that. I know some of you guys were asking about this graphic that I showed. It's that red and green graphic. So I'll show you this one more time. Let me go ahead and switch sources again. The European model is in red, the American model in green. They're in pretty good agreement bringing this north of Puerto Rico, and this would be, again, by the middle of next week. So we're talking Wednesday of next week. Once we get towards Friday of next week, it gets towards the Bahamas, and then through next week, the following weekend, then it starts to go through the Bahamas. But right now, we're starting to see these come into some sort of agreement of turning the system generally up the coast here. Now, again, I do want to stress, that's the current run of the forecast models. These models are run constantly, every about 12 hours or so. We're going to get a new run of the forecast model, and it may change. So that is certainly something we'll be watching for very, very closely. All right, I'm going to try to answer one more question before we wrap it up here. Okay. West Coast, Florida, Tampa, what effects would we see? At this point, it's looking better for Tampa Bay. The farther east this stays, the better for our area. in fact, there may be some indications that we could actually get some drier air from this system as it sort of wraps around the circulation, depending on how far off the coast it gets. So that's a sort of a look at where we are. All right, so that's going to do it for now, guys. If you're just hopping on, let's see, we got still about 3,000 people joining us. I'm going to give you just the latest track from the Hurricane Center, and I'll wrap it up with that. Give me 1 second here. All right, there we go. That's the forecast, the latest forecast from the Hurricane Center as of 11 a.m. this Sunday, winds 115 miles per hour, and the latest track has it moving towards the islands by next Wednesday, 8 a.m., 140 mile per hour winds near the Lesser Antilles. Then by Thursday, north of Puerto Rico, by next Friday, we're talking near or just north of Hispaniola, moving towards the Bahamas. So, enjoy your Labor Day, everyone. I wouldn't, be too worried about this. We're actually going to go ahead and post this Facebook Live session. Keep it posted on our Facebook page. We're going to post it on our website as well and share it to some of our other Facebook pages. And we're going to continue to give you updates on Irma over the next couple of days through the holiday and through all of next week as well. I know there is still a lot of folks are keeping a close eye on this one, considering with what happened a week ago with Hurricane Harvey. But just know that we are always going to watch it, and any new updates come in, we're going to pass them along on our social media pages, Facebook, Twitter. Make sure you're following us. And yeah, we're going to continue to keep you updated. So locally this afternoon, a couple of isolated storms, mainly east of I-75. We'll use Max Defender 8 to track those as well. That's going to do it for me, guys. Thanks for hopping on. I appreciate you joining, and have a great holiday, and make sure you stay safe out there.